It's a little bit crazy. You're suddenly blurry now. I wonder if anything was real. All our history's hazy, like driving in the pouring rain. Are we in too deep to heal? You tell me that you're sorry, we'll make up tomorrow. Tell me everything you know I wanna hear. I'm trying to be open, but that window is closing. And either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here. Before we're leaving here. I know it ain't easy, but there's something left to hold on to. We can work it through, you don't have to go. There's a future here with me. We'll find the light in a clouded room. Not giving up until you know. You tell me that you're sorry, and we'll make up tomorrow. Tell me everything you know I wanna hear. I'm trying to be open, but that window is closing. And either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here. Either way, I need to make it clear before we're leaving here.
Yes, shalom, everyone. Shalom. I want to welcome everyone to the house of the Lordship of Israel. I'm Elder Michael Johnson, the pastor over here with the Lordship of Israel with King James Bible University, and I welcome you. And we have a pretty interesting lesson we're going to be going through today. And I want to make sure that we clearly understand a few things before we actually get started. And we're putting up new things to where we can let people know exactly where we stand. And one of them is know who you're learning from. So you'll be saying this periodically to let you know exactly who and what I am and what I do. That's there. And this will be in a lot of our descriptions to which I'll be letting people know from this day forward. Because one of the main things we want to make sure we understand is this. We are not like everybody else. We don't do what camps and Christians do. We actually use the Bible and the Bible itself to find out what thus said the Lord. Also, if you want to learn how to precept and understand the fundamentals and how to get started in that, Elder Pittman, he has classes to where you can email him. He's over with Line Upon Line for KJBU, and he'll be more than happy to teach you what you need to know. Again, these classes are free. We have this evening where you'll go over to King James Bible University. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting teaching. A lot of new things that we're going to be showing you that's going to be there. Some words that you see in your Bible that I normally chose to save to where we deal with different people in person. But I'm going to be sharing them with you today to show you exactly what things mean. So it's going to be a very interesting teaching this evening. And if you do want to join us, we do a daily prayer that you are welcome to join us. And if you're Israel and you want to seek for prayer, you can send that over to baptism at KJBU. I'm going to be showing you that in a minute because we're going to be doing something else. But you can seek prayer. You can put what the prayer is or you don't. All you got to do is just say you're asking for prayer. And we'll go from there. And we're also going to be looking at, in this year, we're going to be going to San Antonio. We're going to be doing a baptism there, and the same for the prayer. You send it to that email you see right there, baptism@kjbu.org. And you send it for prayer, or you can send it for baptism. And with that, you can make sure that you put on there and just put in the subject heading. If you're looking for a prayer, you put prayer. If you're looking for a baptism, you put baptism. And we will answer you accordingly. Because one of the biggest things that we have a problem with, and before we got ready to go into the next city, the next town, before we got ready to go into there, to seek what is going on there in Sardis, I had to take this time and take this opportunity to where I couldn't just personally just run in there, because a lot of us got caught up in certain cities. So I want to make sure in this city, we make sure before we get there, we want to make sure we understand what's going on. That's what brought us, before Sardis, we brought us here to the Book of Secrets. The Book of Secrets is written by Satan, the ancient and honorable. He's good at what he does. He's extremely good at what he do. So I need to prepare you for this and make sure we can understand what's happening. So we need to understand more so what is Satan is all about. And he rests in people. We touched on it last week, and before that, we spoke about Antiochus, whose surname is Epiphanes, who was a ruler of the Greeks. And one of his main functions as a ruler, he was to seek to Hellenize the land of the Jews, the followers of Christ, in the process. So he promoted Greek culture. We see a lot of that today. A lot of that even today. But he promoted the Greek culture in his way of life. Which, as him being king, and if you live in his kingdom, you must suppress your own personal traditions, your own culture, your own practices, to live within his kingdom. See, Antiochus, he's quite a different person, but he has a spirit in him, and that spirit is the oppressor. And when we look at that, and when it was known for the conflicts, and he had conflicts with the children of Israel because of their culture, the followers of Christ. And if you didn't follow his, you fall short. You will be persecuted. And he looked to seek, and he persecute the Jews. Anyone who did not adopt the Greek customs. He even made a point to where he also desecrated the temple in Jerusalem. Epiphanes. See, Epiphanes' empire in relations with Israel was always confusion. Always confusion in relationship. This was proven really first in his early reign. And relatively even later, he even showed a glimpse where he kind of tolerated, like Jews, he kind of tolerated them in their practices. But then some even believe he even made even efforts to support. However, later in his reign, he became more hostile towards the Jews. He became more hostile towards our practices. He became more hostile about anything that we did. So Antiochus even ordered that whoever did not adopt his Greek customs, which even later led to a rebellion of the followers of Christ, which is actually known, which you can go see, and which we're going to be touching in the Maccabean period, where the revolt, where eventually led to our independence in many parts of this world. But according to the records of the Jews, including to the book of Maccabees, Antiochus Epiphanes, ruler of the Greek, is seen as an enemy to the Jews. I don't care how we look at it, how we flip it. See, and based on his harsh and oppressive ways, he sought to oppress the Jews' practices, the follower of Christ's practices, way of life. So he committed many acts of violence in the beginning. And he did one of the same identical things in a way. When God sent his word to free us from bonds, from under the customs that people have put us under, he sent word. Epiphanes did one of the same. And we want to look at these, and we want to understand exactly how he is setting this up. And we're going to go down and look at the record. So we're going to go over here. We're going to start here and look at this in Isaiah chapter 14, and we're going to start right here in verse 13. We're going to get a better understanding on what's happening here. And it says, "For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north." Epiphanes at its best. And once he do that, we want to see something and look at better for what he said. In Epiphanes, he's telling you who mortifying God. He who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4. Epiphanes at its best. Epiphanes at its best. So we want to look at this and understand what he did. As God sent his word down out of his royal throne, comparing the fierce man of war, Epiphanes did one of the same with his messengers. So we got to start looking at this. In 1 Maccabees, we're going to look at chapter 1, but we're going to pick it up at verse 44. And we're going to see what Epiphanes did and get a better understanding on how he was working this out. And it's telling us there, it says, "For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem, including the cities of Judea, the land of the Jews, the land of the followers of Christ, that they should follow the strange laws of the land." Bingo. Antiochus, the oppressor, sent letters like as a flood into the land of the Jews. And he had convincing ways. That we can't like put it to the side, because he had very, very good convincing ways. It was either by calamity or it was by tragedy. We're going to find out more about that as we continue down to find out this history on what was going on. In Wisdom of Solomon chapter 14, and looking at verse 20, this happened. It says, by the multitude, the Lord, by the grace of the work, took him now for a God. Who? Epiphanes. Which was little before was but honored. So what we're looking at here, it came to the Jews' sanctuary. You're going to see later, came in there, he defiled it, killing people through either calamity or tragedy. And with that, he was forcing them through terrors. In that they were serving stones and stocks, and with this uncommunicable way that they honored him as a god. And he was nothing more than an evil man, a prophet of Satan. Let's look at this in verse 21 and see a little bit more. It says, and this was the occasion to deceive the world, for men serving either calamity or tragedy as ascribed unto stones and stocks and the uncommunicable name. Exactly what we was talking about. This is why he was capable of doing what he was doing. Because he's going to make you serve one of the other ways. Let's take this in a little bit more. We're going to go over here to Psalms and look at this. In Psalms, and we're going to look at 83. But we want to look at that verse 2. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee lifted up the head. Exactly what we was getting into. Because this enemy is going to sit there in this confusion that he caused. In Epiphanes, mortifying God, was the ringleader against God's people. This man was so wicked. They surnamed him. He surnamed, which is self-honor in persuaded ways. That's what this is talking about. See, his name was Antiochus, but his surname was Epiphanes. For his persuaded ways, either by calamity or tragedy, he's going to make you serve him. Let's look at something. Verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. Exactly the point. Because now they can make you do this. See, calamity through the affliction or distress or plagues that's going on even today, or tragedy by oppressions and extortions or by burdens. He was the wicked root which was born of Antiochus. He was the wicked one that was born of Antiochus. Let's get some history on this guy. We need to get some history on this guy. And we'll find this over in 1 Maccabees. We've got to look at this in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, but we're going to pick it up at verse 10. We want to pick it up at verse 10. We want to get some history on this guy here. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname. You see this surname. This self-honor in persuaded ways. Surname Epiphanes, mortifying God. I'm telling you, we can't even make this stuff up. And the son of Antiochus, king, he had been hostage in Rome and reigned in 137 years of the kingdom of the Greeks. Yeah, exactly what his name is. He was a hostage. But let's look at something. We got to look at something as we go down here. We're going to be seeing some things about this guy. We need to learn about the guy. And we got to learn about the guy because a lot of us might get caught up going into contract with this guy. And it says, in those days went out of Israel, wicked men. So now we got people even in our own group. In our own group, we have wicked men. I want you to keep that, put that in your pocket, keep it in mind. Who persuaded many. I want you to pay attention to what they did. Who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make covenant with the heathen, that they are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow, either through calamity or tragedy. Now we're starting to make the picture a little bit more clear. Now we're starting to see more of the issues that is happening. Because this is what they saying. But it gets better. It gets better. It got to be more. And he says, so this device pleased them well, which it did. So they seeing this the only way that they thought they had peace in the land. But this empowered some because of Epiphanes. So as Epiphanes seeing this is working in a real good way, he empowered some of them. Meaning giving flunkies a little bit of weight. I know everybody know what I'm talking about. I know everybody know what I mean by that. And we got to see how this was working out. Now we got to see exactly what Epiphanes was doing to get us convinced to do these things to our own people. Then certain of the people were so forward herein. They were so forward. Some Israelites, some Hebrews were so forward. They were so perverse. They were so crooked. They were so disobedient towards God that they went to the king. And this king, he gave them license. He gave them authority to do after the ordinance of the heathens. So they walking around carrying weight in the land of the heathens. You see it, you see the same thing out here. The same identical thing you see here today. You see people where they get so forward about stuff, so disobedient because they feel you can't do nothing to them. Because they got license from Epiphanes to do according to the ordinances, the instructions, and the decisions based on the rules of the Greeks and according to the Jews' customs. They can be against it because they're going to do the way of the heathens. It's right there. It's right before us, but it gets better. It got to be more. It got to be more. And we have to keep going through here and seeing what's going on. In verse 14, it tells us this. It says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs with the S, plural, not singular, of the heathens. So they had to do this. As they was doing this here, and as they was building this here, and as they constructed this here, they did this. They built a place. In the place is the same thing that you see even existing today, but we want to see some of this stuff, what it's talking about there. In Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 24, it tells us even about some of these places when we look at it. And we see here what it says. Thou hast built also, thou hast also built unto thee an eminent place. Yeah. And made thee a high place on every street. Yeah. Same thing they was doing back then, they doing today. Verse 25, and making it clear. Thou hast built thy high place on every head of the way, and thou hast made thy beauty, the word of God, the laws of God, to be a whore, to be hated, and has opened thy feet, thy desires to every one that passes by, to multiply thy whoredoms. That's what they did. That's what they did. So this is why, this is what he did. He built this, and then they have them everywhere. Actually, tell you what, same thing like you see Starbucks. Starbucks is on almost on every street corner. You can go anywhere. I done seen Starbucks where they next door to each other. 2 different Starbucks next door to each other. This here. So as they built this, we see more so what's happening. As we look at more things, and then they built this because they wanted to multiply whoredoms. So they set it up. Better known as ships. In Psalms 104, we're looking at verse 26, it says, there go those ships, there is that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. The same ones that was given license. The same one that was given license. Based on the authority of the heathen. Many of us will sit there and say, okay, so what about my dad? Okay, he was given authority of the heathens. What about my husband? He was given authority of the heathens. Some even say, my wife, she was given authority of the heathens. What about me? You got someone who's going to say that. What about me? I teach the truth. I teach it. Really? How do you teach it? Well, they take care, I quit my job and they do this. Yeah, you're doing it under the authority of the heathens. So, and what they do, they teach this, and they teach it, and why I say you got to be watching real close. It says, and they made themselves uncircumcised and forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen, including they were sold to do mischief. Exactly the point. Exactly the point. They forsook the holy, the separated covenant, which is with Jehovah, that the way that the Greek customs to keep this, and where they can stay bound to flesh. That's what it's telling you right there. They forsook and they stayed uncircumcised, so they stayed joined to the world and joined to idols, joined to Epiphanes, joined to him. That's what we do. And they stayed with this and in the presence of this oppressor. So anyone today with the playbook who's seen the bigger abominations by mortifying the ways of God, they will reign over them in bondage. This is what we do. We want to reign over people to put them back in bondage. We're good at doing it. And we'll see what happened here. In the same thing, epiphanies. I want you to understand what this is. See, epiphanies. It's not one to be played with. Mortifying God. See, even when we look at this, and I want you to pay real close attention, even the Egyptians, the king of the Egyptians, the king of bondage, feared this guy. Feared Epiphanes. Mortifying God. Let's look at this, and we're gonna, because I said we need history on this guy. This guy is not one to be played with. It says, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have dominion over 2 realms. Epiphanies. Can't never get enough. And he wanted to reign over these two realms. He wanted to reign over two governments, two kingdoms. And he wanted to reign over Egypt. I'm telling you, you can. It's comical. He gonna reign over the king of bondage. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to know that he can mortify God. That's what he's doing. See, Egypt wasn't doing that. Epiphany said, I'm going to do that. He is not the one to be joked with. It's the same saying, and I know many of you guys have heard that saying. It says, when the black people went into hell, they went down there and put out the fire. That ain't nothing but a joke. Believe me, that is a joke. Because you're not going to put out no fire. But Epiphanies tried it. Let's see here what Epiphanies did. It says, wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war with Ptolemies. And you see right here, the king of Egypt. But Ptolemies was afraid of him. I told you he was afraid of him. He feared this dude. He wasn't one to play with. And fled, and many were wounded to death. They were scared of this guy. Epiphanes was not one to be played with. And to understand what was going on, so when he entered into Egypt, just telling you just what he did, we're just going to make sure everybody's on the same page. So when he came in here with these chariots, showing in the parable side is talking about his power and judgment with the elephants, and then these elephants is the men of power and the wisdom and wealth, and the horsemen was the doctrines and his teachers, and this great navy was the house of his family. Bingo. But I'm going to tell you the real thing is, this is the crazy thing, and please don't laugh, but because Ptolemies, his name actually means warlike savior. His name means warlike savior. But he's afraid of Antiochus. You can't make this up. You can't make this stuff up. How can you sit there? He got this cold name, Ptolemies, warlike savior, scared of Antiochus. I'm telling you, it's funny because I'm telling you, he's the king of bondage. He's the king of this. Can't make this up. You can't make this stuff up. Okay, but let's go down. Let's look at this a little bit more. And you see what happened. And it says, thus that he got the strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took the spoils there. So he came in there and he took out everybody. Epiphanies. Walk in and give me two of those, one of those. No, kill that. Take that one. No, kill that one. He gonna walk through and do this. But let's get a little bit more on this guy. We gotta get a little bit more on this guy. But I need y'all to understand one thing before we go any further. I need y'all to understand one thing. Where we gotta go to Sardis, we gotta meet this guy. Keep that in mind. We gotta meet this guy. So I just want you to I'm just giving you intel about this guy. And it says, after that Antiochus that has smitten Egypt, he returned again 144 in the third year and went up against Israel, including Jerusalem, with a great multitude. I told you, he's not one to be played with. And we got to go free our people. But you're going to see something. And it says, and he entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar. Remember I said he went in, he told you earlier what he did, but that's okay. We're seeing it now. It says, and took away the golden altar and the golden candlesticks, the candlesticks of light, and all vessels thereof, but it gets better. And he tells us right here, in the table of showbread, pouring vessels, in vials and censers of gold, and vials and crowns and golden ornaments, And there was before the temple, and poured off, and he took the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures. Also he found, and he had taken away all that went in his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. So how did he do this great massacre? He only did a great massacre because he had to do something. He had to have a great massacre. He mean he needed people. So let's look back at this and understand what he did. We gotta look back at it and see what he did, because we're just reading it, we don't see what he actually did. But when we understand it, we can understand what he did. So let's look at what this guy was able to do. Antiochus, he entered into and he did this great multitude, and he entered in there. And when he entered in probably into the sanctuary, he took away the golden altar, the highly favored altar, the highly favored altering table. First thing he did, mark it. But he did more. He did more. In the candlesticks and the vessels thereof, and the table and the showbread, pouring the vessels and the vials and the censers of gold, in vials and crown of the golden ornaments. So he's saying a lot of stuff here that we need to know what's going on. In there where he poured off, and he took also the silver. So now we got to find out what he's talking about, because he's talking something. He's talking parable, but we got to find out what he's saying, because he took this silver he took the women, and then in the gold, in the men, in the precious vessels, in the offspring. Do you think that just have enough to where he can have a massacre with? Yes. That's what he was capable of doing. And once he did this, he took the hidden treasure and they found, and they took them away and went into his own land, having a great massacre. Yeah, because he took what he needed. He had taken the treasures of the people and returned to his own land and massacred these people he had taken, and even speaking proudly of the ones keeping the covenant of God, which he commanded them not to do. He already was showing what he was about. And we're going to speed up and we're going to find out something, because we got to remember what this guy is about. Let's speed up a little bit, and we're going to pick it up at verse 45. Let's speed up a little bit. And pick it up at verse 45. And, excuse me, and we're going to look at Epiphanes, because he said something that was clear, that we should have been really clear of. He forbade burnt offerings. Just keep that in mind. We're going to come back and clarify everything. Don't worry about it. I'm going to come back and clarify everything. But he forbade burnt offerings, including sacrifice, including drink offerings in the temple, that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days. We're going to clarify everything, because this is what he told us what not to do. So Epiphanes, the oppressor, Epiphanes, the God mortifying God, and Antiochus, the oppressor, he forbade all this stuff. So we got to understand it. So he forbade burnt offerings. He forbade living gifts, these living offerings, these living gifts. He forbade that to do this with God. He forbade that, including sacrifice. You see that? Including sacrifice. It means establishing covenants. And then he also, in drink offerings, to gain knowledge and faith. These gifts that's supposed to be going out. He forbade that in the temple, meaning in the spirit where he's resting place in our bodies. But then he wanted us to profane. He wanted us to pollute and defile the Sabbath, these festivals, these celebration days, those days of lights of understanding. That's what he wanted us to do, all in a nutshell. That's why he held it down. He's not playing with us. He is not playing with us nowhere. But guess what? It gets better. It gets better. It don't stop. And you see right here, and polluted the sanctuary. So we got polluted, including the holy people, included the separated people. Bingo, right there. So even polluting the sanctuary, our bodies, the separated people, now seeing why Epiphanes, the mortifying God, why he built these new intimate places on every street corner. And you see these children of Israel going in these places, worshiping them. Now we see why. Now we understand why. And including many of them wanted. See, you can even look at quotes that he even said. He said this in verse 41. I'll show you what he said. Remember this? He said in verse 41, he says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to the whole kingdom and said, we should be one people. We just quoting what he's saying. We should all be one people. I'm telling you, this guy is not playing with us. So what he did this, and then he did these altars. So he set up these altars, these offering tables, and then these groves. Actually, let's go down. Let's pick up some more of this. So he set up these altars. I'm just getting ahead, but let me go right here. And he said he set up altars and groves and chapels of idols and sacrificed swine's flesh and unclean beasts. We need to figure out what he's saying. He's saying a lot of stuff, but once we clarify, we know all this stuff he's talking about. So he set up these groves. So meaning he set up these elders and gods and goddesses. What he did. These chapels, these statues and images. Now it's making this more clear. Now it's being more clear. And these idols having people where they sacrifice. Now they're going to establish covenant. And with swine's flesh, contemptible and unclean things. And evil and unclean beasts. Evil men. Now, capiche? Now do we capiche this? Now do we get what's going on? While all these places is out there? I want you to remember something Yahweh said, and I'm going to show you something Paul actually even reiterated this. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 23. We're going to look at this and just going to look at it. We just want to look at it. Because Yahweh said this when he was here. He said this clear as day. In Matthew 24, verse 20, he says, then if any man, that means anybody, any man, M-A-N, anybody, man or woman, husband or wife, mama or daddy, cousin or brother, sister or boyfriend or girlfriend, friend or foe, if any man should say unto you, lo, here's Christ, or there. It's a full thought. Believe it not. Better not believe it. Better not believe it. You better not believe it. Gonna get caught up. Let's read a little more. Because it's already set up. It's already set up. And it says, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch, if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. They're going to get the elects. They're going to get them. Through Trinity or calamity. They're going to get them. Not getting out of it. Going to get them. Not getting out of it. Going to get them. Let's look at this. How was I telling you? Jesus, he says, remember, I told you before. I told you in the presence of. I was here and I told you guys this. And you see this here. Because this is the secret book. I'm telling you, I told you this. You got a secret. Here it go. It says, wherefore, if they say unto you, remember, he is in the desert, go not forth. That means anywhere here. anywhere here, this is what this is talking about. It says, he is in the secret chambers. Believe it not. Don't believe it. Don't get caught up. I'm telling you, this is what, so he's telling us this. Now, Paul reiterated some of the same thing. We'll see this. And we want to understand what's going on. In 2 Thessalonians, we're going to see something. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, picking it up at verse 1. And I want to make sure we understand this all together. Verse 1, 2 Thessalonians, it says, now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, or is telling us the creator of salvation, the anointed way, and by our gathering together unto him. You see how they're saying that? You see how Paul crafted this out? But he's telling us, remember this, because he said, we gathering together unto him. But watch this. I want to show you something. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, picking it up at verse 34, because he's told us this already, right up front. This is why he says some of these things. This is why Paul dropped some of these hammers on us. In 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 34, it says, including if any man hunger, if you hunger and you hunger and you need some word, let him eat, let him learn at home. And come not together unto condemnation, and the rest will I set in order when I come. If you want to do this, do it at home. If you're going to do this, do it at home. But he's telling us something on what we need to do. And let's look at this a little bit better. Verse 2. It said in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2, it says, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, one of the reasons why, or by trouble, remember how he going to get you. That's Epiphanes, he's going to get you. He's going to get you in trouble, nor by word, nor by letters, as from us. Comparing the same way with us. As the day of Christ is at hand. We had a full-blown, unadulterated, low-down war. Seemed quiet, but we had a full-blown war. And he tells you, verse 3, let no man, let no man deceive you by any means. Lo, Christ is there. Lo, Christ is here. Lo, he's in the desert. Lo, he's over here. Don't let no man deceive you by any means. For that day should not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. He's going to get some of you. I'm a very straight up person, because everybody here is not a very elect. People here tell you the simplest way, and as I tell people, I don't say this thing to, one second. I don't say this to deter you from anywhere. But as I said before, watch where you learn from. I tell people this all the time. But you have some people, they like to, I'm going to go get a little bit over here. I'm going to go get a little bit over here. I'm going to go to IUIC. I'm going to go to GOCC. I'm going to go to all these different places. You are elect. Keep that in mind. You are elect. Because you like food from a lot of different tables. That's why I tell you all the time, my channel goes up and down. I'm cool. I'm good. But the thing is, where people like to float around, because they want to get a little truth from here, a little truth from there, a little truth from here. You think you're getting truth, but you're getting just a lot of stuff. You elect. You are already deceived. You don't even know it. And he's telling you this. He's telling you this and wants you to be and he's being very upfront about this. Because it's really the sons of perdition that you're running into, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worship, so that he as God sitting in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And it tells you right there in verse 5, making sure it's clear. Remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. He told us this stuff. He told us this stuff. And the simple fact is what he was saying, what was happening from the beginning. We got to go back and we're going to recap, because I want to go back and show you exactly what he was saying from the beginning. In Ezekiel chapter 16, looking right back at verse 24, it says, thou hast built the eminent place, and thou hast made thee a high place on every street. This is what they did. They did this. And you see again where thou hast built thy high place on every head of the way, and made thy beauty to be abhorred, and have opened thy desires to every one that passeth by, to multiply thy whoredoms. This is what they have done. In what they do, they practice this, because you got to remember what they do. As scriptures always fulfills itself. And it tells you in Psalms chapter 104, again, we're going back and look at it, make sure we all understand where we're coming from. Verse 24. Verse 26, I'm sorry. It says, there go those ships, there's that Leviathan, whom thou hast made to play therein. He's there. In what they do, these serpents, they go to these seminary schools for learning. In the building they call churches, and they exercise what they practice. That's what they do. And this is what they're capable of doing. Once they got you, they can convince you, persuade you, either by calamity or tranity. Now they got you. See, people sit there and say, well, I can come here and I learn over here, but then I still like to float over there. See, once it falls on this ground, it burns up, because you're not good ground. That's why I tell people, you can float any way you want to float. It don't matter. Same way I tell people all the time. For a couple of years, I talked to 3 people, and I was doing it on purpose, on live stream, which is a whole nother channel. So numbers is nothing. People who want truth is everything. I even ask people if they like to float on them other channels, you guys need to deal with those channels. You should disengage from me. That's the best thing to do. Because I don't want you to be all in confusion. You need to be hot or cold, one of the two. Don't be lukewarm. So we got to look at this background. We got to look at some of the experiences that we can see on what they're capable of doing. We'll see this back in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 48. We'll see here. We're going to see it here. And it says that they should leave their children, their works uncircumcised, exactly, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and purification. Exactly what the point is. That's exactly what the point is. This is why people learn the way of the heathens, and they leave their children, their works, uncircumcised. And they stay joined to idols in this world, and they're making their souls abominable, hateful, and loathsome unto God. This is what they do. And it's in all matter of uncleanness and purification, meaning these sinful acts. By having them committing these acts and doing these things in the flesh, which is against the ways of God. Can't help but do it. Why? Because this is what Israel, this is what these children do. In fact, let's look down a little bit. Let's look at verse 49. It says, at the end they might forget the law, exactly the point, and change all the ordinances, exactly the point. Look at us today. I want you to just take the time and look at us today as a people. As a people. I want you to think about something. And when you look at us today, tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm lying. Tell me if I'm off. Tell me if I'm screwed up. Tell me if I'm crazy. But you look at us today, we have men marrying men, women marrying women. Homosexuality is the new norm. You even have people who stronghold and hold hardcore living and make sure they hold to it, that Black Lives Matter that's ran by women that are homosexuals. And many people here support it. And their main agenda is not Black Lives Matter. The real agenda is homosexual ways that matter. So they can forget the ways of God and multiplying their whoredom by committing more and more fornications, live the way of the world. That's what they do. That's what they hold to. But guess what? We'll hold to it. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. No, that's the smoke screen. That's the smoke screen. Homosexuality is what it is, and then they'll sit there and make you hold on to it. Let's see some things which is in the law, and we look at this in Leviticus chapter 18, in verse 22. So this is why when you sit there and you see people, they talking about, well, we're a non-profit. Yeah, non-profit, you all under the same identical umbrella. Any non-profit, any camp, any church that is under the umbrella of 501c3, they hold to these same things because they can't talk against it the way I'm doing. I tell you, you can go take a hike. In Leviticus chapter 18, and we're looking at verse 22, and it's telling you right now, this is against God. It says, thou shalt not lie with mankind comparing with womankind. It is an abomination. It's an abomination right up front. I don't care how we look at it, how we flip it, how we script it out. In fact, he says this again. Go back to Leviticus, and we're going to look at something in Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 13. Because he says this a couple of times to make sure we clearly get it, but we don't get it. We don't get it. It tells you here. It says, providing a man lie with mankind, comparing he layeth with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They should surely be put to death. Their lifestyle shall be upon them. And you having homosexuals say, no, we this. No, you're human, yes. Your lifestyle, I don't have to condone your lifestyle. You take that crap somewhere else. See, this is the problem we run into. These things is detestable to God. I don't care how you look at it, how you flip it. Some of y'all say, well, my brother's like that, my cousin's like that. I can care less. That's hateful to God, and they live like that and be gone from here. Going straight to hell. These things is detestable to God. Tell me something. I want to show you a little bit. We want to look at something. Show you something. See, because I'm going to show you how screwed up we are as a people. How screwed up we are as being people in this world. How screwed up we are. And I'm going to ask you a question, but I want to show you what the answer is as we go through it. And tell me, we seen this tragic thing that played out on TV. It was recorded. What I'm speaking of is George Floyd. We watched this act, this cruel behavior, and George Floyd was met with his demise. But then you have homosexuals, this Black Lives Matter, they lead in the charge for justice of a crime. I want you to keep making sure you clearly understand what I'm saying. You have homosexuals leading the charge for justice of this crime. You having people who marriage in these mixed marriages leading charge for this crime. You having people who is murderers, people who committing adulteries, people who fornicating, people who doing these things, leading the charge. I want you to clearly understand where I'm coming from. And then the first thing we do, we seek the God of Israel to intervene. We seek for him to intervene in all these matters. And you think he's not going to do something, or you think it was wrong. Interesting. Because I'm going to show you something. I want to make sure we know that God don't change. We want to make sure we understand where God stands. We want to understand God don't change ever. Not for you, not for me. See, a lot of us like to walk around like our poop don't stink, but it do. In Judas chapter 5, we're going to look at something in verse 17. And why I brought that up about George Floyd, about his demise. I want you to make sure you understand something. In Judas chapter 5, verse 17, it says this. It says, in Ulis, they sin not before their God. When we don't sin before our God, they prospered, because the God that hateth iniquity was with them. Oh, that's interesting. That is highly, highly interesting, because verse 18 is going to tell us more, and we'll still talk about it. So it says, but, however, I told you them buts is a killer. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed, and many battles were sore. Exactly the point. And were led captive into a land which was not theirs, and the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities was taken by their enemies. Now I'm going to ask you again. You see record of this. You seeing the record of this. When we don't sin before our God, we prosper. But when we sin, he departs from this, and we are destroyed. So I'm going to ask you a question again. We seen this tragic thing with George Floyd, which was still tragic. We can't remove tragic from this. But it was led by homosexuals and all these other people. You tell me, how can God intervene? And we sinned against God. We commit acts against God. How can God intervene? You tell me. Will he? No. What we do, we want to make sure he fit our lifestyle. See, this is what we do. We want to make, he's going to fit our lifestyle. I'm going to make him fit mine. Yeah. This is what we're good at doing this. We are so good at doing this, it's unreal. In fact, when you look at this even more clear, I want to show you something. We're going to look at James, because we just got to look at all the records. We got to look at the records. Because I'm telling you who we signed a contract with, but we got to look at the records of this. In James, and we're going to look at this chapter 2, but we're going to pick this up at verse 11. We're going to pick it up at verse 11, and you're going to see what it says here. And it's telling us this here. Excuse me. It says, for he that said, do not commit adultery, said also, do not kill. Now, if thou commit no adultery, yet if thou kill, thou art become a transgressor of the law. Yeah. See, we want to become homosexuals. One second. We want to become homosexuals. We want to become adulterers. We want to become all these other things. But we're going to say we're going to hold on to the ways of God. But we picking and choosing what we want to do. You think about that. Well, I'm going to still be a homosexual, but I'm not going to be a killer. I'm going to be a killer, but I'm not going to be a homosexual. I'm telling you, we can't get out our own way. We can get out our own way on this. In fact, it says this. It says, so speak ye and so do. Comparing, they shall be judged by the law of liberty. We and choosing what we're going to follow and what we are not going to follow. And then the first thing we look for is God to sit there and, okay, God, where are you, God? Or the famous stupid thing, people, well, he's always on time. He's always on time. Really? We sit and we play these games, playing a dumb game. And when we sin not before in the presence of our God, we'll prosper. But when we depart from his ways, we're going to be destroyed. We're being destroyed, and then the first thing we wonder, where's God? Where's God in the process? You have people who will sit there. They'll sit there and they tell you all these things. Why they tell you? They will come to this church, come to here. God is not a whore. You're going to sit there and you say you got God in you, and then you're going to go into a building. Makes you nothing but a low-down, dirty dog whore. That's all it does. Things like a threesome. And Christ tells you he ain't in the building, God is not in the building. And then you trying to go into this chamber with two. Just like having a threesome. So if you're going in the building, you thinking you taking God in there. So you looking to do a threesome. This is why that theory is so bad with men talking about they want to have two wives. Not understanding the token is in their flesh. And if you join two to one man, the only can be joined together and be presented as one. And it's impossible to take three to do it. It's impossible. Impossible. But we do it. We do these things. So this is how you have to look at this. And you have to understand. But you have men who's presenting ignorance before God. They're going to present this ignorance before God. And they're going to sit there, and when you present that ignorance before God, that is your token. This is why I say we have to relearn everything based on ignorance. A token. Let's just take the simple fact token. We dealing with a spirit guide, so he has to show us physical things. And a token is a pledge or a promise with a sign, with the evidence. Let's go a little bit deeper here. Let's look at something. Actually, let me don't use that. I'm not going to use that one. Let me use this one. Let me go here. Let's go to Deuteronomy, chapter 22. 22, and we're going to pick it up at verse 13. I'll show you a token. And we're going to look at this, and we're going to get a better understanding of it. And we have to look at the token. Providing any man, M-A-N, man or woman, take a wife, meaning you're going to take on the spirit. That's why it's M-A-N, not M-E-N. Okay, let's just move forward. And it says, including go in unto her and hate her. I want you to pay attention to what's going on. So you're going to go into her and you hate her. But let's look at something. We got to look at something and understand what something is happening. In verse 14. In given occasion of speech and against her, and bring up an evil way upon her. And say, I took this woman, and when I came to her, I found her not a maid. I found her not a pure and unmarried. Didn't find her that way. I found out she's married to a lot of stuff. Keep this in mind. So he found her as not a maid, not pure and unmarried. Found her this way. Found this spirit, she's into all kinds of stuff, like a dog. And when he went into her chambers, others was there. She was not a maid. This can have a bad appearance, not just the woman, but it can be on the father and the mother, bringing an evil way upon the children of Israel themselves, just on that alone. So this is why just hearsay, what people will do against people. You have men who will sit there and lie on girls and women. They'll sit there, yeah, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this to her, I've done that. You even see it in Susanna. You see, men will lie. I'm particularly talking about men because men love to lie on their things. They'll lie on it. Oh yeah, I had her. They'll lie. The reason I'm being more stuck with men because men do it. And I've seen men do it. Lying on themselves. In what they'll do when this has happened, one thing can only stop this lie, this hearsay. One must have evidence. One must have evidence, because if not, people are going to believe the lie. People will start believing the lie. So with this evidence, in these things that's spoken against you, and if you don't have no proof, it can be held against you. You see this in your daily lives. But tokens of evidence kills those words spoken against you. That's why a lot of times when people sit there and say stuff, I sit there, no, let's go to the book. Let's go to the book. See what the books say. This is why you always need a token of evidence. Let's look at this and pour some more in here. Because you're going to see the father, he's going to do something. It says, then shall the father of the damsel, what he's going to do, including the mother, shall take and bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity. So he's going to bring forth the tokens of the damsel's virginity. So he's going to bring forth the pledge, the promise of evidence that she was a maid. She was pure and unmarried. This damsel to prove her virginity, the evidence of things that is normally not seen. That is not seen and confirmed. That's what that's saying there. That's what virginity is. Evidence of things not seen and confirmed. That's all virginity is. Not virgin, virginity. Not virgin, virginity. Understand there's a difference between the two. So before the damsel was taken to be a wife, that's the proof. So you got to bring forth this token. And we got to see what goes on here. Because it can get a little bit better. And the damsel father shall say unto the elders, I gave my daughter unto this man to wife, and he hated her. For whatever reason, he hated her. But that ain't all. I got something for JoJo. I got something for little JoJo. Here you go right here. You want to hear it? Here you go. And lo, he have given occasion of speech against her. I found her not a maid. That's his occasion of speech. I found her not a maid. She was a hoe. Just call a spade what a spade is. That's what he's saying. I found her not a maid. I know that dad wanted to kill him. I know he probably wanted to kill this guy, but he's doing it according to the laws of God. But I know he wanted to kill the guy. And you sitting there, as he said, he say, and found thy daughter not a maid. He's telling him straight up. He said, and yet, these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. Here go the tokens. We're going to be finding out some of this later on, even in that teaching this evening. Here go the tokens my daughter's virginity. Here's the evidence. This is the evidence. He's talking, here go the pledge, the promise, the evidence of my daughter's virginity. This virginity, the evidence of things not seen and confirmed. But we got to understand why I keep saying this. Why I'm even saying it in that way. We want to understand that too. Because the tokens is a form of a cloth. That's the token. So that token is the form of the cloth, which the cloth is spread down and when she lays upon it, and then the man goes into her and he does those things and he do this, and then the first thing happens is blood is going to be left upon the cloth. The blood is the token of her lifestyle, that she was unmarried. She was pure. That's the token of her lifestyle, that she once lived. But now she no longer lived, because now he has went into her, and now that evidence is only on the cloth. So the blood is a lifestyle that she had once, and she shed that for another lifestyle, which now will be with her husband, but they won't be two, they're going to be one. So that lifestyle, that blood should not have to come out again. The same acts is in the flesh, and those are the tokens, which is the evidence of the acts of the flesh. And the same with fornication. Fornication is talking about these forbidden practices and these unfaithful being a harlot or a whore, and you caught up in all this lasciviousness. That's what he was actually claiming on her. This is what he was claiming on her. So these things also have tokens also. They also have tokens also. But we see here, he said he had the tokens of this. But we want to see, how can you have tokens exactly? People say, well, how can you have a token of this fornication and these forbidden practices and all this stuff, and being a harlot and caught up like a whore? Well, really? Yeah, you got tokens for that too. See, the same work with the spiritual tokens. Then we're going to look at those too. And we'll find this over in Acts in chapter 17. And pick that up at verse 22. We're going to see it there. Same identical thing. And this is with our brother Paul. Then Paul stood in the midst of Mars Hill and said, Ye men of Athens, I perceive that in all things ye are too superstitious. Yeah. You're too superstitious. It's right there. Because he's going to tell you in verse 23, he says, For as I passed by, I beheld your devotions. He's going to pass all our devotions, these images, these superstition ways of worship, these religious gods, these images of spiritual fornication, these statues. And the statues is those objects of worship. Spiritual fornication. Get caught up again. So what they're saying, and he found this altar. He's telling you everything right now. He's telling you everything. I found an altar, an offering table of an inscription. He found this thing, this of an idol with the inscription to the unknown God. I'm telling you can't make this up. It's impossible. It is outright impossible. And you see here, Paul goes on to talk about it a little bit more. He said, in whom therefore ye eagerly worship, him declare I unto you. So he said, God that made the world and all things there, and seeing that he is the Lord, he is the creator of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands. He don't dwell in those places. He don't dwell in those places. How stupid do you think it is? He made the world, and then you gonna put him in a building. Hebrews chapter 9, picking it up at verse 24, and make sure we still understand what's going on. And you have many camps, many churches, they're going to still do it. No matter what, they're going to do it. And it says, for Christ is not entered into holy places made with hands, with separated places made with hands. Hebrews 9:24, which is figures of the truth. We just went through this. We just went through this. Acts, even Acts, it keeps telling us the same identical thing every time. Acts 7:48, we see the same thing. Howbeit, the Most High dwelleth not in temples made with hands, which said the prophet, which makes it more clear when you look at Acts 17:24. He's saying all over the place, but no matter what, men going to continually go in these places. He's telling you, the God that made the world and all things there, seeing that the Lord of heaven and earth don't dwell in temples made with hands. He's telling you this consistently. Consistently. So this is why you even have some people, when they look at even the wisdom of Solomon, and you have some places they're not going to even recognize the wisdom of Solomon, saying the Apocrypha is not real. He's telling the truth over here in the Songs of Solomon, but he's lying over here. Makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. In Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 14, verse 8, Paul referenced this, but Solomon said that. He says, but that which was made with hands is cursed. That building. As well as it, as he made it, because he made it, and because being corruptible, it was called God. Exactly what goes on. See, people sit there and they'll tell you, well, I go there, we just go there to meet there. No, it's called a place of God. It's called a worship house of God. You calling it whatever you're going to call it. You can sit there and say whatever you want to say. You calling that the way you're going to go learn about God. That's corruptible. Because God already said, I don't dwell there. But this is why so many people, and I say it all the time, so many people deserve to go to hell. So many people. Because no matter what, they're going to marginalize in their own head. They weigh on how they think they're going to make God fit in their box. No matter what you do. You're going to argue that, oh, no, we have to do this. We have to do. No, you have every right in the world to go to hell. But it's telling you right even in verse 9. Verse 9, it makes it even more clear for you. It says, for the ungodly, So it's telling you ungodly, doing it, you ungodly. In his ungodliness are both alike hateful unto God. All of it is hateful to God, every bit of it. So we can sit there and say what we want, but it's hateful unto God. And it tells you even more so what's going to happen. It says, for that which is made shall be punished together with him that made it. But we always want to make sure it's going to fit our lifestyle. We need it to fit our lifestyle. That's what we seek. Oh no, well, we got to do this. We got to do this. We got to do this. I want to do it my way. Yeah, you want to fit your lifestyle. So as we go back to James, that's why it says so many things that's so clear. In James chapter 2, picking it up at verse 12, that's why he says this. So speak ye and so do, comparing they shall be taught by the law of liberty. Yeah, we can do this. No, we don't need to do that. No, we can do it. So people need to know what's going to go on here. And the main thing is what we want to understand is how this is going to play out in our life. See, yeah, people have taken this route. Many people has taken this route. Many of us, even that are here, has taken this route. Because a lot of us have made an agreement with the way of the devil. We can say whatever we want. Many of us have made an agreement with the devil. The same shall perish also with the using of those ways. And I'm just looking at numbers. I'm looking at facts. Prophecy is one thing. Looking at facts is another. For that reason, no one can judge you on what you learn and your faith in. With your regard, your celebrations, you being familiar in your appointed times, especially your Sabbath days, all which are shadows of things to come. But the actual physical body should have been a sacrifice unto Christ. I want you to think about this, and this is why I said it's so serious right now. And I'm gonna paraphrase something. I'm gonna go to it, but I'm gonna paraphrase it. Excuse me, because the same thing we just went to it just earlier. What Paul said, and when he said, "Let no man beguile you." Don't let no man. Excuse me. Don't let no man beguile you of your reward. It is a voluntary way in way you can worship. And being voluntary is men want to be servants of God. Saying they're going to be messengers or angels, and they intrude into those things which they have not seen. But then these same other men, they sit there and they put an image there. Then they vainly get puffed up. They are vainly puffed up. Holding on to everything that they believe is correct in their own eyes. So these bands having this nourishment ministered and knitted together, increased and of God. And if you sit there and you're saying that you holding on to God, you holding on to God. But the main thing is you want to tell people that you go to churches, you go to these camp buildings, you go to any edifice on a regular basis and saying this is a place that's learning of God. I don't care where it is. I want you to really pay close attention to what I'm saying. If you sitting there and you saying, well, I'm part of this camp, I'm part of this place, I'm part of this church, but I'm also part of Christ. So I have a question. And this question is for you to answer within yourself. Not for you to put in the chat, but for you to answer for yourself. If this is what the truth is, and that you nourishing and you being ministered in these buildings or in these places where these men have you come, but if you died with Christ, if you died with Christ, actually, I'm going to tell you what I do want you to answer. How many saying they died with Christ? I just want you to put in yes, no, yes, no. That's it.
Okay, I found this on the web for how many saying he died.
Okay, that's my thing. But how many say they died with Christ? Yes or no? Just yes or no. I just want you just to be committed to yourself. Many people sitting there saying yes, they died with Christ. Died with Christ. So many of you guys saying you died with Christ. Okay. So the question becomes now is this. If you died with Christ, then you died with the elements, and you died from the elements of this world. You pay attention to what I'm saying real close. So if you died with Christ, you died also to the elements of this world. The elements is of the things that is of this world. So then why you continue to be subject to the ordinances of the world? That's the question. If tithes were money, which is not, but they use it for money, even though it's not. But if tithes were money and they're using it for money, but you died with Christ and you died with Christ, then why are you subject, or why is someone subject to pay tithes to a church and you died with Christ? You're not subject to the elements of this world because you died with Christ. If you died with Christ, why are you required to attend a building made with hands? If you died with Christ, then you have to remember, then why are you being part of that? This is the point on what I want you to see. If you died with Christ, why are you subject to be obedient to the flesh of men who call themselves shepherds? See, these are things I want you to think about. These are things I want you to hold on to. Because as we getting ready to go into this next place, you need to come out of her. You need to come from out of her. Let's look at something and see something. Let's look at the main thing. We're going to go to Revelations and look at this in chapter 18. Revelation chapter 18, but we're going to start right here in verse 1. And it says, after these things I saw another messenger come down from heaven, having great power, including the earth was lightened with his glory. It was lightened with his glory. This messenger came down to warn you. And you're going to see what this messenger is telling you. And he cried mighty with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen. And he become the habitation of devils. And whole of every foul spirit, and the cage every unclean and hateful bird. It's right there before you. I'm going to show you something. And as we just going through it and getting this understanding now. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. Actually, I want to clean this. I want to clear that. So we want to look at this and same thing. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7, it says, "For the mystery of iniquity, the acts of sin, doeth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way." Yeah. A lot of us is going to be taken out of the way. Because we're going to hold on to other things. I don't care what we do. We're going to hold on to other things. Because you're going to marginalize in your own head what you're going to say is right and not what the Word of God says. In verse 3 in Revelations, it says this. It says, "For all the nations have drunk the wine of the wrath of her fornication, including the kings of the earth have committed fornications with her, including the merchants of the earth have waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies." It's right here. Right here. Right here. We can't even get around it. So we're looking at this and it's telling us, which all nations is drunk. So we all stumbled. All stumbled. Drunk, we stumbled. By the wine, by the foreknowledge of prophecy. We stumbled in this. It was the wine, the foreknowledge and prophecy. Including her wrath, her destructions and judgment, the fornication, the forbidden practices, even kings, these rulers of the earth, the same fornication, these forbidden practices with the devil. This is what it's telling you right here. It's telling us right here, right up front. It's telling us this. Right up front. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, "Come out of her, my people. Be not partakers of her sin, that ye receive not her plagues." This is interesting. And this is why I always say, many of us that is here is not going to make it. Because we have our own ways in doing things. We're not going to adhere to the ways of God. And what we have done is we're going to end up receiving those parts. We're going to end up receiving these things of the fornication. In fact, this part right here is you're killing. It says, "For her sins have reached into heaven, including God has remembered her iniquities." That's the issue. That's the issue. But I want to show you this and make sure we're all clear on this. I'm going to read these two here. And it says, "Reward her, even her rewardeth you." So he's going to reward her as we getting rewarded. "And double unto her, double according to her works. In the cup she hath filled with her double." Let me clarify this. So we'll be all on the same page. In Revelation chapter 17, picking it up at verse 4, we want to be on the same page with this. About this same woman. And it says, "And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication." Bingo. A lot of stuff, but let's get it all worked out. Said a lot of stuff. This woman, this spirit, she was arrayed in purple. Purple. In believers of worship. In believers of worship. It's her. And she was purple and scarlet. The scarlet is waves of sin. Waves of sin. And the scarlet color. The understanding of languages and appearances. If it wasn't enough, she was decked with gold. She was decked with men. She was decked. And she's been in men. It's telling you right here. It's right up front. She have clothed herself with us. She's decked with gold. So many of us is walking around with that spirit. And precious stones. These precious stones, these precious, mean the offspring, these precious, these the offspring, these the ones that's highly esteemed. These PKs. I'm a PK. I'm a PT. I'm a PT. Yeah, okay. We're stones. We're the believers and pillars there. That's them stones. Yeah, my daddy's a preacher. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you one of them precious ones. You one of them highly esteemed ones. This is why we had a problem. But it tells you even more here, it's letting us know. These precious stones, including pearls, these precious jewels, having a golden cup. This golden is well-favored cup, this vessel of this man. This golden cup in her hand, in her power. So this highly favored man, M-A-N, so it could be a woman, is in her power. Is in her power, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Her in a nutshell. This is why so many of us is going to get caught up. But it gets better. It gets better. There's more. Upon her forehead was the way written. So upon her forehead was the way. So she done got her own path. Excuse me. So upon her forehead, her assurance and confidence, that's on her forehead, was the way written. The way written is the testimony in Shiloh whose right it is. See, because only who let will let. Keep that in mind. Was the way written. Mystery. Bingo. Secrets. That's what they're saying. Secrets of confusion the great. Secrets of confusion the great. So there's Babylon. The gates of gods of confusion. And it's telling you the mother of harlots, the spirit of wisdom of harlots, the spirit of wisdom of harlots, of prostitutes, including the abominations of the earth. But it gets better. It got more. It gets better as we go. John saying, when I saw the woman drunken, so now she's drunken. So drunken, she's stumbling. But she's stumbling for what? With the lifestyle of the saints, with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of salvation. The martyrs is the one voluntarily dies as a witness. Wow. But John wondered with great admiration. He wondered with great respect, because the Bible quote one thing that we got to keep in mind. We can't never forget this. Isaiah chapter 9, looking at verse 15. The ancient and the honorable is the head, and the prophet that teaches lies is the tail. Yeah. So as we look at this and we're coming down to it, we go back to Revelation chapter 18, because now we understand it. 18 verse 7 says this. How much she had glorified herself and lived deliciously. She glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow gave her. She said in her heart, I sit a queen. I am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. You know how many people and how many women say this? How you? Oh, blessed, highly favored. How you? Oh, just blessing, just highly, highly favored. If God was treating me any better, I believe I think I'm His favorite child. This is what we do, and you got a contract with Satan. For that reason, shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine. She shall be utterly burned with fire, for the strong is the Creator God who judges her. Exactly the point. So as we sit there and see this, and it tells you, for the rulers of the earth, who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, and that's many, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. But you're going to get cast out with her. Let's look at this verse here real quick and see what's going on. Verse 10, standing far off for the desire of her torment, saying, Elias, Elias, that great city Babylon, the mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment, thy doctrines and teaching come. So I say to each and every one of you, we got to go into Sardis. We have no choice. And many of us is continually committing them. Committing these things and going through these things and thinking nothing of them. But hopefully, that through this, you can prepare your minds for what we're going to be experiencing next week. So hopefully that you guys can meditate on this, go back, look at it, check it, double check it. Be a workman. Make sure you find out what is going on. Now this afternoon, the same as I said, over at King James Bible University, I will be doing a serious class with this visual. That's going to show you a lot of good things and some of the tools you'll need, not only in this life, but as you continue on this journey to where you'll clearly understand what thus said the Lord. So I say to each and every one of you, as you continue, I ask that you also look at, and you get in contact with Elder Pittman. If you're going to learn the precepts and how to go through it, that's another one you go through. And one of the ones that you still make sure to, if you're looking for daily prayer, we do it every morning at 6 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, 8 o'clock Central time, 9 o'clock Eastern time. So you can join us. We do it every morning. It can go anywhere between 5 and 8, 9 minutes. And then we go on about our daily chores. If you're interested in baptism, please send your request to there. The same as your prayer. You send it there to baptism@kjbu.org. And hopefully that each and every one of you guys was richly edified. So I say until this evening, and we'll be over at King James Bible University this evening. So I say until this evening, and until next time, to each and every one of you guys, I say shalom.